We're breaking down Mickey Loomis' comments from yesterday on WWL-Radio.
So he said, whenever you have results that don't match your expectations, you have to look at the underlying reasons why, right? Like, we have answers for lots of things. We have answers when we have players get hurt. We have answers when you lose your quarterback for a couple of games. And then he went on to say they don't have answers when there's an avalanche of all those things at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, it's not an outrageous statement. Like when you lay it out like that, like, yeah, we would have been fine. Mickey's saying, like, yeah, we would have been fine if Derek had gotten hurt and there weren't all these other injuries, but we wouldn't have been okay with everything happening at once. You know, one or the other option. You can have all the injuries, you can have the quarterback, both at the same time. You're kind of screwed a little bit. I don't think it's an outrageous thing to say. I just don't want to keep hearing about the reasons beyond the results or the underlying. Like, it's just. I don't disagree with what he's saying. I just don't like. I just keep hearing every time someone talks. It's like, we got to look beyond this. We got to look beyond that. Yeah. Like, just win a game.
I know. His philosophy is not a wrong philosophy. You just can't hear it 3 years in a row, and we've heard it 3 years. So he did say a lot of the same things when they kept Sean Payton after 2016 too. This is just an entrenched philosophy he's had. We've talked to him privately. We've talked to him publicly. He never changes the message, which is he thinks the teams that switch coaches every 2 years are like just dysfunctional organizations. He said you can never have continuity, you can never have consistency, you can never have stability if you're the kind of team that as soon as something goes wrong, you replace everybody. He just does not believe in that. The ownership obviously puts their belief in him and also does not believe in that. And it's true. This year, probably more than any of the years we've covered before, we all showed up at every one of these games and said they have no chance to win. And then they didn't win. So it's all true. It's just nobody wants to hear it. And it's too many years in a row of the exact same thing. Like, can you lose 10 years in a row and be like, yeah, well, it wasn't perfect today. I didn't hit my drive right down the middle, and I didn't hit my approach shot right next to it, so I didn't birdie. And it's like, well, are you just not a good enough golfer? Like, what? At some point, nobody wants to hear this stuff anymore. So I appreciate where the philosophy comes from, but that's why I said at the beginning, I want them to be able to have a fair evaluation. Is this like an 11-win team that just had bad luck, or is this just not a good enough team? And I really think it might be the second answer, so I hope we can find out if it's the second answer.
Yeah, like the thing is I don't disagree with a lot of what he says in a vacuum, but then, like you said, it's the accumulation. It's like, all right, like, been hearing this for a minute now. Like, when's it going to change? Like, I know they like to fashion themselves like the Steelers, and they look at them as kind of the guiding light. You hire a coach every 15 years, and you kind of ride with them. But here's the thing. Tomlin, I believe, won a Super Bowl in his second year and has never had a sub-500 season. Like, it's very easy to ride with that for a long time when everything is cool. Like, even when you're kind of like mid, it's like there's been success, and the floor's never really been that low. Like, in DA's defense, like, they've had two basically 500 type seasons, but you've never had anything above that. And when you have things above that, it becomes a lot easier to stomach stuff like this. And it's easier to believe that, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, I heard someone talking today about Sean McVay, and the response to it was, well, it would be insane to fire him. Like, there's all these injured players. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the Saints too. But, like, the difference is McVay's won. Yeah. Like, he has rings. He's done things. There's a reason to believe. There just hasn't been enough reason to believe. But I also don't think it's insane to act like these injuries did matter. Like, they did, but you just don't want to hear about them because it's just it just falls a little bit flat. Like,
right.
You know, it probably like you said, every game we walked up to, yeah, they aren't going to win this. Like, how could they possibly win this game with all these guys? How are they going to beat the Chiefs? How are they going to do that? How are they going to do that? And it's just like, yeah, okay, like, it is too much to overcome, but you just don't want to hear it anymore.
My takeaway from these comments is Dennis Allen is not a game away from being fired. I think what has happened over the 6-game losing streak, they have, as he said, they have their answers for what happened to the team during that 6-game losing streak. I do not think that means Dennis Allen could survive losing the next 6 games if they're healthier and they're still losing. I think he will be evaluated fairly, but he's not getting fired because of this current 6-game losing streak. If he never gets any better with a healthier roster, if they don't get more competitive, if they finish the season, what's left? 8 games left and 9 games left in the season. If they're 3-6 for the rest of the season, I'm not saying he can survive that, but he's not like a week away from being fired right now. I really don't feel like he is based on these comments.
Yeah, and he said they're getting players back. he feels like they played really hard, and he doesn't see a lack of accountability on the field. That does not sound like somebody that's giving a negative job review to the person that works for them. And I would go so far as to say that I listened to this and it almost sounded like he wants to like develop a coach. Like he feels like if you wait on things work out, and you keep adding to it instead of just starting over with someone else and having to go through the same process. It just doesn't feel like the team is at all in the same place as us talking about it. I mean, after the last game, I said if they lose a game, they got to do something, right? There's no way. Like, you listen to this, it doesn't sound like it's at that place. Like, no. It sounds like it's going the distance. They're going to see it, and it would take seeing players not having accountability, players not playing hard, players, just revolting, and who even knows there if that would do it. They might go through the whole entire season. So it wasn't. I don't think that the seat might be hot, but it's not on fire yet. It just really
losing
isn't.
to Carolina changes their reality, though. I think. I don't think he gets fired, but it becomes a different conversation. It's like, all right, when you see a loss like Carolina, what were the reasons? And the reasons aren't going to be you didn't have your quarterback, and they're not going to be you played a tough opponent. So what will those reasons be? It'll be like, you've lost this team. You're not coaching well enough. Like, it starts to change reality. And then if they come home and they lose to Atlanta and Cleveland at home, then you're going into a bye week being like, all right, now this is the story can still change. It still can.
At what point is there the irrevocable moment, though? Like, it just doesn't seem like, man, that's the thing. Like, I just don't know. I was talking to Jordy Collada this morning on his show, and, I just said to him, I'm like, there's no basis for comparison in trying to figure out how this is going to work. It is the most. You look at other teams and it's like, well, they did this and they did that, and this person got fired when this happened, and nobody sits through this. And it's just, there isn't a comparable situation to this anywhere in the league, just from the whole entire setup. Like, it's just from the top down. It just doesn't run like other teams. They have their own unique thing, and it just kind of makes it impossible because there isn't a set of standards that anybody's adhering to. And it's just, and I don't mean that like there's no standards. I just mean it's not like they have their own handbook, and everybody else kind of has a different handbook, and it's just a different setup. And I don't know what push comes to shove is, if the GM does not like who's telling him to do. Like, I just don't know necessarily exactly how it works. So, I don't know. We don't ever interview Gail Benson, so I don't really know how she thinks about anything. So I just don't know how to think about it. I mean, so it's just such a unique situation. And, ultimately I think it's a Mickey Loomis decision. And is it Mickey alone? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
I really want to latch on a comment that you had about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Even though Mike Tomlin and Dennis Allen, they haven't had the same career because Mike Tomlin's been in longer. Think about it like this. They lost Ben Roethlisberger, their franchise quarterback. They had to go through a carousel of different type of quarterbacks. Now they have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. The car's a little bit better than them at the moment, but it's just funny to think about how they operated throughout those times. You had people that didn't want to be in the locker room that they got out, in terms of like Chase Claypool, and the Saints have done the same thing, but the results just aren't the same. And, it's really interesting to see going forward what's going to be that tipping point.
Yeah, I mean, they've drafted pretty well. I mean, they run their cap a little bit different. I mean, it's just kind of it's a sustainable situation where, I think part of the thing with the Saints, that I think part of it too, like, look, this regime came in on the back end of the go for it era, and it just makes it a little bit harder to build your team too. There just isn't money to go out and get all kinds of free agents. There isn't money to go out and get all kinds of depth players. Mm-hmm. Like, they get a couple of them, and I think they've done a really good job of like identifying league minimum veterans who can come in and play a role and kind of keep it lifted up. But like, there isn't a ton of money. You can't get 30 of them every year, and the draft picks haven't been so good. So there are a lot of things that kind of like have set up this situation to be a little bit taking on some water. It's true. I mean, it's a lot of things. I think there are a lot of things beyond just the coach that would have to change to have Steelers level success and have it consistently every single year, and to be that type of franchise. And it's going to take a couple of years to clean up the cap. Mike had a story about it recently. To do that, you got to draft better. You got to be more consistent there. I'm not saying that you don't change the coach. What I'm saying is, like, I don't think just changing the coach in and of itself as one single isolated move brings about the change that people are hoping for. I don't think you just get a different coach and all of a sudden you're winning 12 games. Now, that isn't to say that someone couldn't come in and lift the level a little bit, but I think to get to that like real level, like it's going to take a multifaceted approach on many different fronts.
And a philosophy change. I mean, that Cap story I wrote is, if you were really committed to it, like I think a lot of people wonder, what if you trade everybody and cut everybody? Like, stop paying Carr $30 million, stop paying Cam double digits million, stop paying Taysom Hill double digits million. Like, if you really, don't re-sign Chase Young, don't re-sign a mega free agent. If you decided you were really going to do that, like what the Falcons did a couple years ago, what the Panthers are doing now, you could, in a couple of years, quickly be back. You'd probably get a couple good draft picks along the way. But for all these same reasons, I don't think they're close to doing that either. I would do it all at once. I mean, the next coach might not love that, but I would, let people, new coach, new philosophy, new scouting, new whatever, and just rip it all down. I mean, I think if things got bad enough, I would consider all of that at once more than just replacing the head coach, as you said.
What if they get to the end of this and they're a 7-win team? They go 5-4.
Then I don't think they're going to change a thing. I really don't, and because it would prove to them.
Yep.
Early in the season, we were this close to being 4-0, and at the end of the season, we went 5-4, and we were just really bad when.
If they do that,
eight of our 10 best players were hurt. That's how they would.
If they do that, they really have to find a way to you got to really refill this roster, because you can't just do this again bare bones, hope for the best, and kind of just skim by. Like you really have to commit to this. Then it can't be this like half measure again, because I don't think you can sell it to the city anymore.
No,
you can't.
You can't.
Like these people, like they're going to be in here on Sunday instead of watching your game. They're going to be, you can't do that. You cannot do that to the city. You can't run this back the way it is. People will check out, they'll be gone, and I'm not going to blame them. Like, you can't sell this to anybody beyond. Like, if you do it and you run it back with everybody, you better bring in some headliners for that team.